I now want to go on to the epistemological matters. That is, how do we
Yeah.
know what we know? What are the limits of knowledge? What are the methods and nature of knowledge? And when I read first time Imam Maturidi's Kitab al-Tawheed, I was really surprised, how sophisticated he approached to the topic. And you quote him as well in your book, where he famously said, the path to knowledge of reality of things is perception, iyan, reports, akhbar, and inquiry, nazar. Basically, senses, traditions, and or revelation and reason. Um, do you think that Maturidi found a good balance between these three, or does one outweigh the others?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. I think that yes, I think he has a good balance. If we look at these sources, really we can see that sort of our sense data, as you said, this our ability to kind of experience the world directly. This must be at the heart of of our sort of epistemological system. It's the way that we even come to know whatever reports we have of and come to be able to read the Quran or hear of it, for example. And likewise, we need data, we need information if we're going to do any reasoning. So there can be an important point for the reason and for the mind to inquire into things, but we need the sense data. So I think this is, Maturidi makes an incredible case for this, and it's obviously an important area. And then you have the kind of two other elements, which are this kind of the so-called kind of traditions, or we could say the reports of things, which, as you said, is mainly basically are the Quran, and we could say the hadiths of the Prophet, at least in terms of religion, in terms of Islam. And then you have, but it could be other sources as well. And then you have your reason, which is the mind's ability to reason about things, rational principles. In these areas, he does focus on both, and it's not one to the exclusion of the other. There's no kind of ranked hierarchy. He does think that the rationality is required for verifying reports, and there's two ways that this is done. One is for these kind of individual reports. He basically understands that some reports are kind of less than certain. This is basically on the base, this goes into the science of hadith, basically, but the chains of narration need to be scrutinized, and we need to see, are these people reliable? Basically, checking the reliability of our sources. And then the second type of report is something that's so well known that there's no longer any doubt. It's just come from so many different source branches or sources to us. So this is like, sort of in a way common knowledge that's reported about the world, things that everyone knows, who the prime minister of your country is or anything like that. That's ultimately something that's come through reports, but it's no possibility that somehow there's a big conspiracy that the person you think is the prime minister isn't really the prime minister. That's not credible at all. So this kind of idea, the so-called mutawatir tradition. Now, so Maturidi, he does have these different elements, and this is pretty, in a way, seems really standard. But we must remember that the reason it seems standard is because he's one of the first people to talk about it in this way, at least within Sunnism. So it's become standard. He's the reason for that. He's at the source of that. There were earlier figures who spoke about these kind of three sources, of course. But in terms of like putting it at the front of a Sunni Kalam book, he made the model that was followed by so many people, particularly in the Hanafi tradition. In the famous Aqaid Nasafi, you have the same division and so on. So that's very important. But I think what I'd like to say about the way he reasons and argues is he seeks to give multiple arguments for every element of his theology. He will actually bring out arguments that he considers to be more rational. He will bring out the more traditional arguments, i.e., often quoting verses of the Quran, and the two elements come together. And I think obviously he is distinctive in thinking that human beings can come to a knowledge of God, to the existence of God, without the use of revelation. And that's an important element of his thought, that he does think that human beings, even without the sending of a prophet to them or the reaching of a prophet to them should be able to reason from the world and understand that there is a creator to this world. But he doesn't dismiss the importance of revelation for giving us a good picture of the nature of God, the attributes of God, and also for giving various arguments for various theological matters. He brings the two together and he tries to put them in harmony and actually use them to kind of mutually support each other. And I think, I mean, it's a bit difficult. If you read the book, you can sort of see, or I mean, audience can see how how I think he's doing this and how this works in a bit more detail. But the way that I think he's working with these sources, it's not a kind of circular proposition where reason supports revelation, revelation supports reason. It's more of a kind of a sort of two powerful sources that we have. But as we've said, even his sense of tradition and reports is ultimately grounded in the reason. So I think he does, and that's ultimately grounded in sense. So I think the reports here, they once you've got a rational structure in place, once you've got the human mind working well with its sense data and understanding the world, then it can appreciate what revelation brings to further our theological understanding. So I would put it in that kind of way, but nonetheless, I think it is a balanced approach, and it's something that's been very influential in history in the Islamic tradition.
What makes Imam Maturidi's approach to Aql, reason, unique, and what separates him from the Mu'tazila and also the traditionalist line representing by Imam Tahawi?
Right. Yeah. So I tried to go into some of that in the conversation we had. I would say that he takes ideas from the Mu'tazila, but he combines it with these Hanafi ideas, also with philosophical ideas. It's hard to find, to just come up with a simple sentence that says this is exactly how he understands the Aql, that in a nutshell, encapsulates what he's doing. But he basically has he develops his own distinctive position of theology that isn't quite like anything else. It's its own way of conceiving of it. So it's hard. I think I'll just have to say, like in the book, I try to really kind of address that, the way that he looks at the world, the way that the sort of, it's this interesting position that is, there's a widespread perception that the Mu'tazila went too far in asserting the primacy of Aql, right? And so Maturidism is sometimes said to be halfway between Asharism and Mu'tazilism. I don't fully agree with that in the sense that I think it's too simplistic, but it definitely, he makes a space where he's gives almost or equal importance to Aql as Mu'tazilis do. It's really, the rationality is really central to what he does, but he tries to not let that compromise on the core of religion. So, for example, he still believes, that believers will see God in the hereafter. The ru'ya bil absar. The believers will see God. He holds to that. He still believes in distinct attributes, which the Mu'tazila, in the interest of their rational program, got rid of. He still holds what we could say these characteristic Sunni positions on things, but at the same time, he says human beings, can know and are responsible to know God with their reason. That's a position he takes from Abu Hanifa, as it's said, and human beings are able to come to judgments about good and bad themselves without revelation, at least on key and core moral aspects. So I think that the unique thing here is it's the most rational position that can still claim to be within acceptable Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So I think that makes it very, very useful for the contemporary world. It's the most rational you can be, but without falling into the problems that were widely held to be the Mu'tazila to fall into. and to stay within Sunnism. So this is what makes it kind of interesting and very actually useful for kind of contemporary ethics and so on.